If you want to watch the Olympics in the United States, you don't really have a choice. On cable, there's NBC, and for streaming, there's Peacock, both owned by the same company, Comcast. You see, for more than 3 decades, NBC has held the American broadcast rights to almost every single games. Sure, this partnership works both ways. The International Olympic Committee sells the rights to NBC, and NBC earns massive advertising revenue once every 2 years. But over time, that simple deal gave the network influence over how the games are scheduled, how they are packaged, and in some cases, they even began shaping the decisions of the governments hosting them. And more importantly, NBC is an American network, but it didn't just shape how Americans watch the games, it shaped how the rest of the world watches them too. This may be one of the biggest corporate conquests in media history. So, how did one American network become the most powerful force in Olympic broadcasting? And what did the Olympics lose along the way? To understand how NBC got here, we need to go back to the beginning. And surprisingly, the most lucrative TV deal in sports history didn't start on televisions. It actually started on the radio. In 1936, NBC first aired the Olympics live on radio, and that early coverage set the stage for NBC to become a major force in television later. Then, in 1964, NBC became the first American network to broadcast a Summer Olympics live on television. For the first time, Americans watched the games live as it happened in Tokyo. NBC paid a record $1.5 million for the rights. But over the next 2 decades, those rights became a high-stakes bidding game, and ABC quickly emerged as NBC's biggest rival. For years, the two networks went head-to-head, driving up prices and turning the Olympics into one of the most contested properties in television history. After the 1964 games, NBC lost the rights for the next 3 games to ABC. Then, NBC won them back for the 1980 Moscow Olympics. The network paid $87 million for the rights. It was the most expensive sports rights deal ever signed at the time, but NBC never truly got to use them. Just months before the opening ceremony, the US government announced a full boycott in response to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan.
And I have notified the Olympic Committee that with Soviet invading forces in Afghanistan, neither the American people nor I will support sending an Olympic team to Moscow.
Though with no American athletes competing, those rights became worthless overnight. NBC once again lost the rights to the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. The network capped its bid at $190 million, but ABC bid higher and secured the rights. However, the 1984 games introduced an entirely new model for how the Olympics could be monetized. Before Los Angeles, the games relied on hundreds of smaller sponsors, but for the 1984 games, organizers cut that list down to just 35 major partners, charging each of them millions for exclusive rights. This started the modern official partner model we see in other major sports today. Even the iconic torch relay was commercialized, with companies paying for advertising spots along the route. And ABC's national broadcast gave advertisers the exposure they were paying for. With more than 180 million Americans tuning in, the 1984 games became one of the most watched television events in US history at the time. These high ratings and financial success brought new confidence to the Olympic movement for the first time in a generation, and NBC did not want to miss the next opportunity. So, when the bidding opened for the 1988 Seoul Olympics, the network made a brilliant move. After Moscow, NBC did not want to commit millions of dollars and risk another financial disaster if tensions between North and South Korea disrupted the games. So NBC secured the rights, but this time it structured the deal to manage risk. The deal worked more like a revenue sharing model. NBC paid $300 million up front, and if advertising sales exceeded expectations, the network would share the additional profits with the organizers. This was a smart move, but one thing NBC failed to consider was the 13-hour time difference between Seoul and New York. Most major events aired in the middle of the night, making it difficult for Americans to watch the live telecast. Ratings were so low that NBC had to provide about $70 million worth of free commercial time to compensate major advertisers like Coca-Cola and General Motors. After 2 back-to-back failures, NBC began to rethink how it approached the games. The network wanted to understand what made people tune in, and more importantly, what made them stay. So, in 1989, they launched a massive research project interviewing thousands of viewers across the country. NBC found that the Olympic audience looked very different from other traditional sports. In most major sports, the viewers were mostly men, but in the Olympics, the majority of viewers were women. And that difference mattered, because traditional sports coverage relies heavily on play-by-play commentary, endless statistics, and technical analysis. This didn't work well with the Olympics, so NBC developed a new broadcast style that built around 5 key elements to keep viewers engaged. NBC called them the magnets. The first was continuous storytelling. NBC stopped treating each race as an isolated event and turned them into chapters of a long story. Before each competition began, NBC produced short documentary-style profiles of the athletes, their families, their hometowns, and the sacrifices that brought them to this moment. Because if the audience already knows the athlete's story, they are far more likely to stay tuned to see how it ends. It also created hype around the event, and once the story and the hype were there, the outcome suddenly carried far greater weight. That became the second magnet, the emotional weight of victory and defeat. NBC realized that emotion is a universal language, so they started using music and close-up shots of happy and sad moments to elevate those emotions. The third magnet was unscripted drama. NBC marketed the games almost like a reality show. The sense that anything could happen at any moment kept viewers engaged, and NBC sold that unpredictability very well. And the fourth was idealism. NBC sold the belief that the Olympics represents something noble, a rare moment when the world comes together in peace. It made the broadcast feel prestigious and important, which justified the hours of coverage and kept viewers from feeling like they were just watching a track meet. Finally, the most efficient magnet of all was patriotism. The network understood that patriotism simplified even the most complex sports into a clear us versus them narrative. People will watch a sport they know nothing about simply because their country is competing. The network leaned heavily into the home team narrative to create an automatic rooting interest. NBC reinforced this further with the medal count. By constantly showing the total medal tally, NBC encouraged viewers to watch sports they would normally ignore just to see that number go up. But these 5 magnets could only work if people watched the events live as they happened. The Olympics, however, are a global event spread across multiple time zones. This made it difficult for US audiences to watch all the events live. The 1988 Seoul Games had already proved how costly that problem could be. To solve this, NBC developed a controversial production technique known as plausibly live. If an event took place earlier in the host country, NBC would broadcast it later that evening as if it were happening in real time. The announcers never said, "We are live," but they also never said, "This happened 6 hours ago." NBC then rolled out this new broadcast style at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics, and it worked. The network's coverage was widely praised and became a template for future broadcasts. NBC even won several awards for its coverage. Then, in 1995, even before the 1996 and the 2000 games, NBC pulled off one of the greatest business moves in broadcasting history. The network convinced the International Olympic Committee to sell the broadcast rights for the 2004 Athens and 2008 Beijing Olympics in a single bundled deal worth roughly $2.3 billion. But the deal included something that changed everything. NBC quietly added the 2002 Winter Olympics into the bundle. If you look at the previous games, networks like CBS and ABC had held the Winter Olympics every single time. NBC had held the rights just once, back in 1972. So, through bundling, NBC was able to secure the Winter Games after years of absence. From that point on, NBC began securing the rights for 3 to 4 Olympics in a single deal, effectively pushing ABC and CBS out of Olympic broadcasting forever. But this was only half the battle. NBC had now become the home of the Olympics, and they wanted a broadcast that reflected that scale. But there was one problem. Before the 2000s, a local broadcaster from the host nation was responsible for recording and distributing the raw footage of the games. Broadcasters around the world would take that footage and add their own commentary and graphics. This was known as the world feed. But this system had a lot of inconsistencies, and for a network like NBC, which was paying billions of dollars for the rights, this was a serious problem. You see, if the games were held in a smaller country, the local broadcaster might miss a key American swimming heat, or use camera angles that simply didn't work for US primetime television. Sometimes frustrations ran so high that NBC would fly in their own camera crews just to capture their own feed. So, in 2001, the IOC created Olympic Broadcasting Services. Instead of leaving production to host nations, OBS became the centralized entity responsible for producing and delivering the international feed to broadcasters around the world, and NBC was one of the biggest driving forces behind this shift. Once production was standardized, NBC's ratings kept climbing with each Olympics, and so did the network's influence, and by the 2008 Beijing Olympics, that influence was hard to ignore. You see, plausibly live or tape delaying events is something that worked very well in the 1990s and early 2000s. But by 2008, the world was more connected. While NBC was holding the biggest races for a 4-year tape delay, the results were already trending on Twitter. So NBC had to adapt. Instead of tape-delaying events, the network pushed for schedule changes. Major competitions were reorganized to align with American prime time. This was highly controversial among athletes because they typically trained to perform at their peak in the afternoon or evening. Competing for gold at 10 a.m. disrupted their biological rhythms and pre-competition routines. British swimmer Rebecca Adlington is a good example. In the 400-meter freestyle heats, which were held the night before the finals, she recorded a time of 4 minutes 2.24 seconds. The next morning, she won the gold medal swimming nearly a full second slower. Athletes openly criticized the schedule and even called it disrespectful. But much of the American audience was focused on Michael Phelps, who was attempting to win a record 8 gold medals. So to maximize primetime ratings, many swimming finals were scheduled in the morning so Americans could watch them live at night. And rating-wise, the Beijing Olympics were a major success. During the games, more than 211 million American viewers tuned in, and NBC sold over $1 billion in advertising. That success continued through the 2012 London and 2016 Rio Olympics. But the 2020 Tokyo Olympics were different. The games happened amid a pandemic, and NBC's influence was becoming more visible than ever. Japan expected the Olympics to generate billions of dollars in tourism revenue. Officials also projected a long-term tourism boost worth roughly $10 billion over the following decade. With travel restrictions in place, those projections quickly collapsed, but Japan still went ahead, holding the games without spectators. Canceling was simply not an option. And that tells us something important about what the modern Olympics has become. The Olympics are no longer dependent on ticket sales or tourism. They now rely on broadcast revenue, and no broadcaster is more important than NBC. You see, the International Olympic Committee earns roughly 75% of its total revenue from broadcast rights, and NBC Universal is the largest broadcast partner, accounting for nearly 40% of that revenue. Japan wouldn't earn anything from hosting an Olympics without spectators, but much of the revenue still flowed to the IOC and its broadcast partners. NBC, in particular, was hoping the Tokyo Games would drive subscriptions to its newly launched streaming platform, Peacock. Meanwhile, in Japan, only 6% of the population was vaccinated. Polls showed that over 80% of the Japanese public wanted the games cancelled or postponed. Japan's prime minister at the time said his hands were tied and only the IOC had the authority to cancel or postpone the games without Japan facing severe financial penalties. Amid the controversy, NBC Universal CEO Jeff Shell said the Tokyo Games could become the most profitable Olympics in the company's history. But things didn't go as planned. Viewership declined sharply, falling roughly 42% compared with the previous games. Peacock also faced challenges, with viewers reporting technical issues and difficulty navigating the interface. Ultimately, the Tokyo Olympics became the lowest rated games in NBC's history. So, when the 2024 Paris Olympics arrived, NBC took a very different approach. For the first time, the network blended sports with entertainment. NBC filled the broadcast with celebrities and influencers. The games were more like a Hollywood event, and figures like Snoop Dogg quickly became one of the broadcast's most visible personalities. Short clips of his reactions and commentary spread rapidly across social media, generating millions of views. The Paris Olympics were also one of the most controversial games in recent history. From the opening ceremony to the very end, something controversial was happening almost every day. Those moments dominated headlines, sparked online discussions, and brought a whole new level of visibility to the games. If you look at the ratings, over 210 million Americans tuned in over the course of the games. That's a staggering 82% increase in average daily viewership compared to the Tokyo Games. Peacock also saw a major surge, with nearly 3 million new subscribers joining during the games. Peacock has now become a vital part of NBC's business, and the Olympics play a central role in its long-term growth. NBC's multi-billion-dollar deal already gives the network exclusive broadcast rights across every platform it owns, including Peacock. So, for the first time, NBC made all 329 events available to stream. This opened up an entirely new revenue opportunity. In the past, NBC could only sell ad slots for the biggest events. Smaller events didn't attract major brands. But with streaming, even a niche sport like fencing and water polo became a revenue stream. It allowed NBC to sell targeted ads to smaller brands that could never afford a primetime slot. And at the same time, the games helped draw millions of viewers into NBC's streaming ecosystem. Most people who signed up to watch the Olympics stayed for the rest of the catalog.